So you know what I would like to hear is I would like to hear your how I got started
Oh,
story. It's the origin story because I like to hear everybody's origin story.
in the beginning, the earth cooled,
Hmm.
and then the dinosaurs came, and then
They
they
turned into
they
oil, and
died,
then
and
the
then they turned
Arabs
to oil, and then the Arabs took over the oil business, and then
they all
Then
drove
Prince
Mercedes
Charles started
Benzes.
wearing olive dyed dresses, yes.
shy. I couldn't remember dialogue. I was always too nervous, just dreadfully, dreadfully shy. So, but I was fascinated by radio and audio and cartoons. So as a child, I would take my turntable and put on Kiss and Aerosmith and Queen records and take my cassette recorder and pretend to play a radio DJ. And I'd do like wacky commercials and stuff. And then all through high school, I saw people say, all right, it's time to get serious. What do I want to major in at a university? And I decided broadcasting. So I went to University of North Texas, right outside of Dallas, about an hour away outside of Dallas. And because they had a student radio station, so I was able to get some nice free experience there. And I sought an internship at a radio network at the time called ABC Radio Networks. This is in Dallas. And that led to part-time work. So I got lucky. I tried out a couple weeks later. They said, "We love your audition." I tried out for Teen Gohan. That was one of the first things I tried out for. Didn't get the part right away because honestly, they were still in production on the Cell Saga, the end of the Cell Saga. So there were still like little tiny silly stories with one-off characters, and that's what I was cast as. And then he goes to high school. I took over the voice from Stephanie Nadolny, and that was the beginning. That's
You know,
right.
right?
There is something about radio guys. They just have that voice.
And
Yeah.
but you were.
That's a whole different world of VO called promos and trailers.
Mhm.
But and I would love to do that, by the way. I think I have some experience
It
in that.
pays really well.
It does pay
Yes.
really well. But the thing was, like, I used to work in a talent agency for about 8 years, and I would come across these guys all the time, the
Yeah.
old school radio guys. But that's
Yes.
all they could do.
Right.
They thought that they were going to be like voice actors, and no, because really every reporter or something.
That's appropriate.
It would be
Well,
something,
no, is there
something
a
like
couple,
that.
but Kevin Charles did a bunch of stuff.
That's
in
true.
cartoon.
He was
Kevin Charles
actually
quite
he was
good.
actually pretty good, and he is actually a news reporter on a news station, a news radio station in Houston. But he did actually do some pretty good character work.
But he just had this big barrel-chested voice down here like this. You know.
Yeah, he does have a really good voice for that. But
Was the format I was working at because ABC Radio Networks is a whole slew of formats: country, rock, pop, top 40, big band, classic rock, and children. I went from heavy metal, hard rock to children. Like, what? That sounded all sorts of wrong. But the people in charge of Radio Disney heard me on the hard rock station, and they said, "We actually think that your style, which was manic all over the place, doing crazy." And I was getting to write promos and do educational features as character voices and voice them and write and produce So when Funimation said, "Do you have any acting experience?" and I said, "Radio Disney," and said, "Yeah, that counts." I said,
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So, does anybody feel like they have questions yet?
Spurred the
No?
creative juices.
No? Okay, well then. Oh.
Recording voice actors and being the person who finds voice actors for animations and that. I just want to know, like, how would you get on that side of things? Like, as starting off, what would be your tips?
Oh wow, that is a good
You know,
question.
that's a great question. Yeah, and it's a little acknowledged thing is that when a recording is going on, there are three people there. There's the director, the engineer, and the voice artist. And on that most people just don't understand how important that is. As to getting the job, honestly, it's almost a question of being in the right place at the right time. There's not a whole lot of people who do this, but for working with the voice acting, the biggest thing is you can't just understand the audio, you have to understand the video end as well. You're working with a program like Pro Tools, for example, and you're sliding video. On your own as a demo saying, look, this is some stuff I've done, and fire at a couple of people who do something similar. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of voice recording here in Australia, but
Well, not for anime,
Not
but there
for
would be for
anime,
other things.
but for other things there are, and there's a constant need in the commercial industry for people who understand this entire aspect of it. So the real money, I think, is basically in the mixing, but getting in and recording, understanding microphones and everything, that's a very important thing to.
Example, a friend of mine who he's a director and makes his own independent films, and one issue he always has when it comes to like the end of the film is he needs someone working on sound, like mixing the sound and editing the sound and all of that. So it's definitely an area where there's a need for qualified, talented people, and I'm sure, in big cities here like Melbourne or
Is it as cool and glamorous as working for, like, I'm post-producing at Skywalker Sound? Well, no, but I mean, it's a good place to start. Pad that resume and build your experience up and everything. And yeah, like Matt was saying, the unsung hero is the engineer. They have the power to stop and delete and record and and make you sound like a rock star. They position the mic just perfect. We don't. We are not allowed to touch the mics. They cost more than we do.
moderately helpful. Interestingly, I know a lot of the sound people have a music background. I don't know if that's helpful or if that's just a
I think that's just
coincidence.
what people tend to fall into it is most people who are actually into sound for the most part come in because they're working with bands and musicians and so on, or drummers in some cases, since those aren't musicians. But
Oh.
Yeah, the guitars and the
there are a lot of people in indie film who come up the same way, and it's an entirely different crowd. We just happen to have attracted, I think, in general, the musician base, but there's a lot of people out there. I mean, well, Jason Grundy did not come up really as a musician. He was video editor. first.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool. We got another question over here.
Have you ever had some serious trouble when it comes to voice acting?
Like a physiological problem, or
Yeah.
I not really. I mean, I've hardly ever had any kind of issue of losing my voice or anything like that. I've been, yeah, pretty fortunate. And also, there are certain techniques that you use for if you're doing strenuous things, like a lot of yelling. So, haven't really had issues. Probably, yeah, the biggest problem would be not enough work.
Yeah, I mean, I can blow my voice out screaming on a fighting video game, you know, Street Fighter or whatnot, but I'll have like lozenges and Chinese cough syrup and all these little voodoo things, you know, hot tea with lots of honey and things to help preserve your voice. But at the end of the day, you're a human and your machine breaks down sometime, you need to heal. So if you have a session where you scream a lot, something that might be helpful is asking them to schedule.
Worth their snot is going to say, you know what, we'll hold that till the end. So that's the very last thing you do, because after you've done a couple of screaming, suddenly everyone's talking like this, you know?
Everyone's Clint Eastwood.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in a world. Well, you're back to the movie trailer guy.
Pikachu. I choose you.
Yeah. So, did I see someone? Was there
Is there
someone
anyone
else who was saying? Oh, right in the very.
About starting on this road, what would be your advice like to start out? Like, would it just be just to get as much experience as you can on maybe radio, or
Well, radio is the thing about radio is radio, and a lot of it is this, blah blah blah, bye bye bye, and there's a certain amount of experience working with a mic you can pick up there. The key word in voice acting is acting, so it's more about getting experience in the more experience you've got, the more prepared you are the next time in. Scott McNeil, who's a fairly well-known voice actor,
Just tell people start where you are. So wherever you are, just find out what's going on, or join a group online and do fan projects or radio plays or whatever. It's just actually just getting started. Don't wait. Just get started. Do something.
yeah, Kyle talked about how he made radio things. I did the same thing when I was younger.
Except not for free.
Well, yeah, except for free. No, I'm talking no, but he putting stuff in there, just seeing what I could do and get away with, and it's just practice. I mean, sit there in a room and make funny voices to yourself. That's
Interestingly enough,
in this day and age, you can make money on that, doing it on YouTube, just videotaping it.
That's true. That's true. But when I was a kid, I also would write sketches and record them on my cassette recorder. This was back before we had, MP3 players or whatever. But yeah, I would write sketches and
Every kid has multiple personalities.
see where that takes you. And you may end up thinking that you're interested in one area and end up doing something completely different. I didn't know I was going to end up working in anime, or that was even like a possible job that I could ever have. I just knew that I wanted to pursue acting. So I was working in theater and thinking about like maybe how I could work on a movie someday or something like that. I didn't really know where any of it was just getting out there and doing it. And that's how you meet people and find out about auditions and other jobs. I mean,
Yeah, keeping an open mind, yeah, as a kid, I said, my dream is to voice act in cartoons. That's what specifically I wanted. And now I get to do that to a certain degree. I get to do anime dubs, I get to do video games, a little bit of cartoon stuff, and, I love it. I love it all. And I've never turned down an opportunity for any sort of acting experience. I've done a little bit of on into the future with doing, auditions and sessions and stuff. You need a thick skin, though. If you're shy and if one person's critical of your performance, you break down into tears and it takes you weeks to recover, then you're not cut out for this business. You got to be really, really diligent and just let it flow off of you. It's like, you know what? Just like any other craft in the world, I have to train, I have to practice, I have to learn a skill set. And yes, you need to have some raw talent. A lot longer than you.
I think right up there with the having a thick skin because it's incredibly important. But like we said, and we were not joking about the not having enough work, you have to be completely comfortable with the idea that you do not know at any time how much money you will make. Like next month, does Kyle know how much money he's going to make next month? No, no idea. We never know what's coming, when the next gig is, how many auditions you'll get, and then out of those auditions, how many of the jobs will you book? Maybe one or two. You have a passion for it and you really want to do it, then you absolutely should go for it. Definitely.
You're facing this huge storm, and you never know when it's going to relent. It's not predictable, and there's no rhyme or reason, and it's never because, oh, they didn't hire me because I'm not talented. You're talented, but the problem is, so is everyone else auditioning, and the casting people, the director, that you either are or you aren't what they're looking for. It's nothing personal.
Over the last 10 years is the ability to do a lot of this stuff on your own has really increased. It used to be you had to spend thousands of dollars to be able to do any kind of voice work, and now you can do a feature film, using a couple of $100s worth of equipment sitting on a laptop. So don't be afraid that if you've got ideas that you want to do, to go ahead and just do it yourself, because with the internet you have that distribution ability. And a microphone and a hookup to the internet, and you can be doing something, whether it's putting a voice on someone else's show that they're doing in another state, or just coming up with your own YouTube commercial or blog or whatever. I mean, you used to run a blog, didn't you? A video blog?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I do video blogs occasionally, and I'll shoot little segments at cons. I shot one of some of my friends today, and I upload that, and sometimes I live stream from my webcam, and we talk about geek stuff. I mean, social media, I'm all over Twitter and Facebook, so you have all this free and all that, but how do you cut through the clutter because everyone else is doing it? Well, that's that unanswerable thing. Hopefully your stuff will connect with an audience, resonate, and start to go viral and all that fun stuff. But these are some incredibly powerful tools that that you have at your disposal for free. And that's so definitely take advantage of that.
Cool. Now, guys, we've actually got some questions that people have sent through on Twitter.
Oh,
So this one on
Tweety
screen.
question. Business. That's a new favorite one. Thank you. It just seemed like a really good answer to that question. And it was an actual line. Thank you.
Next time, last time, previously on Dragon Ball Z.
And I got it. What? Hiroshi? No, that's not.
Like Zoink Scoob.
And so, and did you do all of the werewolves?
I did. I did like 40 werewolves being killed by Lena Inverse. And they're all me going, oh, 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 oh.
That seems appropriate
It's
for
Slayers.
Slayers.
You can do anything in Slayers.
That seems appropriate. Yeah. Oh, so we have another Tweety?
None at the moment. I'm sure they've
Most mind-blowing moment personally that's kind of come about from doing your job? So anything that's made you go, holy crap, I would not have ever guessed that I'd be here
Wow,
doing this.
that's a super fantastic question.
You know, that
Most-
happens to be about every 5 years. I have one of those moments where it's like, how the heck did that happen? I was a huge, huge fan of animation and giant monster movies growing up. So just work. Panel once with Don Messick, the voice of Scooby-Doo. And it was just like, what am I doing on a panel with Don Messick? I mean, how did this happen? I went to Go Nagai's 30th anniversary in the film industry party, and everybody there was the movers. And like, why am I in this room? And it was just totally bizarre. I just absolutely love giant monster movies, and I dubbed the Gamera movies, and it was just like, I'm dubbing a giant monster.
When I was a teenager, I used to watch a show called Robotech. I was a pretty big fan of that show. And that was a show that was kind of put together for English audiences by a guy called Carl Masick. And I remember the first time I went into the studio to record with Carl Masick, I was thinking, wow. Hi, Mr. Masick. It's so nice to meet you. Yeah, I was really very excited about that. So that was a pretty cool moment. And then convention, I actually met him a few times that I did in the U.S. Anyway, Peter Fernandez, who was just one of the absolute pioneers of this type of work.
For folks our age, he was our childhood.
These shows, and it was just incredible because, yeah, I mean, Speed Racer and Ultraman were two of my very favorite shows when I was a little kid, and getting not just to meet Peter Fernandez, but again, like Matt was saying, is to be on the panel with these people, and like, how could I remember I was doing this panel with Peter Fernandez, and another voice actor that we know, Brett Weaver. He was on the panel.
The first one for me is just getting to do this professionally for the first time with Dragon Ball Z. 2000, the summer of 2000, I go in and try out, and I wasn't really nervous about the audition because it's like, all right, this is what I've always wanted, and here's my chance. And it's either meant to be or it's not. So I guess it was meant to be. So I'm super, super stoked about that. And of course, that has led to other things like, the more you get established, the more your demos get passed around and you read for more. At Ralph, they wanted to have cameos from iconic game characters, so they came to me. I'm like, what? It's like, because another childhood dream, man. I want to be voiced in an animated Disney movie, and now I got to do it. Sure, it's 10 seconds, but still. So I wear that badge really proudly. I'm so stoked that I got to be on that.
This is something I think we all share. But I remember, when I first started the company and producing these shows, I had lived in Washington. Old malls I went through when I was a kid, a place I shopped every day and walked into a store, and there's a wall of all the product that I worked on. And suddenly realizing that suddenly made it so real. It's like, this is someplace I lived as a kid, and there is something I've made that I didn't put there. It just ended up there. And that first time you walk in and you see something that you did on a shelf, it's wow. I'm really a professional. I'm paid to do this, and someone is apparently buying it.
That's true. I remember that the first. This movie. I mean, I actually was doing that. It's just crazy. That was, to tell you the truth, that was a pretty mind-blowing thing. It's like I got paid for an acting job, and it's like a video that people can actually buy. It's crazy.
It's trippy, yeah.
You wake up in the morning, you're like, I get paid to do this. How does this happen?
Yeah.
It's like this is the good universe, and there's an alternate universe where I'm living in a trash barrel because I ate up all the karma from that.
Voicing a particular character, do you do a little bit of history to figure out what kind of voice you might do, or do you pretty much do it on the fly?
Well, it's usually not going straight into voicing a character. Usually there's an audition that happens before that, so it's not a big surprise when you go in oh, what am I doing now? Although the more you work in the industry, the more likely it is that someone will just call you and say, hey, you've been cast in this role, or you've been asked to do this part because it's something that the director feels like that's a job that you would be good at. They're not going to, call Kyle and book him and okay, so the part is this 14-year-old girl.
I'm perfect for that.
Yeah. So they already have a pretty good idea that this is either based on your audition or based on previous work that you've done. So, it's already kind of. Is it a magical universe or, whatever. You figure out who the character is and what they're like and just kind of go from there. And I once read this awesome quote, although I cannot remember now who said it, Buzz, but it was, I look at the character and then their voice comes out of my mouth.
Nice. Yeah, the audition script, we're a blank slate. Whether we go to an audition or a session, we have to be able to construct a performance based on very little they want to see if you can act. Can you give a consistent performance in a character voice, if need be, or if not, just your natural voice? And can you, emote naturally, authentically, and efficiently, and then have good cold reading, good improv, and of course take direction well when they start throwing you curveballs. Because you're not only auditioning for the role, the director wants to see, well, what's it like to work with this new person I've never worked with before? It's like, oh. You in for the next project to audition.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I just did a job just in the past couple of months where actually, I think I can even say what it is now, but I did a character in the Fairy Tale movie, and the director told me that he cast me in the part based on an audition I did for the TV series originally, which was about 3 years ago. And he liked my audition. I think it was my audition that I did for Happy the cat. Based on that, I'm going to have her do. So, it's funny how that kind of stuff can come back around. You never know when you're auditioning what you might actually be auditioning for. Things in the future. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Director?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think a huge part of it is that when the director casts somebody, they've got a pretty good idea of what they want, but they also want to be surprised, because if all you're delivering is exactly what the director make it a living character, because as a director you're trying to wangle in your head on a typical show between 15 and 30 characters, and they all have to be unique and different. And if the actor is taking the lead and running with it and adding that sparkle so that you don't have to worry about it, that's a huge bit. So there should be a willingness to just kind of jump up and say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? You need to be consistent once you've made that decision. But
Yeah, it's nice when it feels like more of a collaboration, because then as an actor I feel like I'm more vested in the performance rather than just trying to sort of parrot out something that's, exactly whatever the director has in his or her mind, that they think it's going to be exactly like X and Y. So it's fun when you get to have some creativity in the part.
Ooh, we have another one that's just come through.
Oh, tweet, tweet.
Is it going to come up on the screen?
It's
I
coming.
love Twitter.
Buffering. Buffering.
anyone in the meantime? There's
Oh, do we have it?
You
No.
could be right next. All right, so Christopher Bell asks, what are your favorite animes you were cast in?
Oh, favorite animes. Oh, gosh. Kyle.
Darn it. I only
I'm
fantasized
sorry that
about
you
it.
weren't in that, but
Out of what I'm in, well, I'm a little biased. I do love being a part of DBZ, FMA, Full Metal Alchemist, because that story is awesome. My part's not that big, but that doesn't matter. It's an awesome show. I would have fallen in love with it anyway. It's a great show. Yeah, that's probably the big one, and Gurren Lagann. Why not? Bleach.
I would definitely echo FMA, because that's just such a fantastic story. So that's definitely one of my very favorite shows. it's like Kyle says, you know, I'm not don't have a very big role in it, but it's still an awesome show all the same. Of course, there's always Evangelion. It's an obvious answer to say that, but you know, I'm very pleased to continue to be a part of the ongoing Evangelion universe. Bob Arajo was a lot of fun to work on. There's just a lot of shows that I really, really enjoyed tremendously. It's so hard for me to just narrow it down to a small number, and then it makes people think that I didn't so much enjoy the other ones, which is totally not true.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about this business is you're working on so many projects. Uh, you know, in the course of the year, you make work on, you know, well, what'd you say, 50 shows in the course of a year, maybe?
Who knows?
And you're thinking of, and you go, oh yeah, gosh, I really love doing that. I mean, you know, we did a show called Dragon Half, and I just love Dragon Half, and I tend to forget about Dragon Half when people ask me about, you know, my favorite projects I've worked on, and it's only because it was so long ago, and it was only 2 episodes, but it was just a brilliant little show. You know, it's easy to pop up Evangelion because people always ask, oh yeah, Evangelion, you know, and I tend to reflect on the things I've done more recently, but Excel Saga. There's so many, and that's the great thing. And we talked about Peter Fernandez a little while ago. You know, Peter couldn't even remember all the shows he worked on. I used to wonder how that was. Now I know how it is because I'm like, did I work on that? Oh yeah, hold on, what? Yeah, I did that. Yeah, okay.
And try doing it for another 20 or 30 years too.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there was at least 1 or 2 other people that had questions around here.
You had one, and then yourself next. All right.
Hi, I want to ask you guys.
Release that in March, so that's what I
you
know
haven't
about it.
You guys haven't started the dubs yet.
She can't tell
that's
you
not,
that if she did, she'd
well,
have to kill you.
No, I mean, I do know for sure that that is not finished. That the dub of the 3rd movie is not finished. So.
Can't remember yet.
I mean, if I have or haven't done it, it doesn't make any difference because it's not coming out until March. So that's what I. Here, and then we'll get to you, I promise.
So this one, and then yourself next. Rocking chairs.
With your voice work, has there been any roles where you had to do any accents?
Oh yeah, I've done quite a few accents. You as well, Kyle? Yeah. I've done. Well, pretty much anytime there's a German, I do like most of the German characters. So yeah, lots of Germans. I've done French characters, English ones. Online with a really bad Swedish accent. So yeah, there's been lots of accents. Oh, Comic Party Revolution. My character in that was like a pretty heavy New York accent that I did for that one. So done quite a few. What about you?
More so on games than anime. I had General White in Dragon Ball was like a Russian. I don't know why, but they made him a Russian. So I talk like Russian. I want to do a Southern accent real bad, but I don't ever get to. Well, League of Legends, Graves, he's a Southern sort of guy, but it's really like, yeah. Have I ever been an Aussie accent? No, I don't think so.
It's really hard, you guys.
Yeah.
Especially your O. I've tried. It's really difficult to do your O.
Just saying no, it's not no, it's nar.
Yes, I've actually wanted to ask Kyle this earlier, but this is the first I've actually gotten away from a booth to have a chat. So, question for Sir Dude. Non-anime related. You recently, when the Monster album got released by Kiss, you said it was the best one you'd heard in years that they released.
Kiss album,
Yeah.
Monster.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I remember you put it up on Facebook. You said it was probably the best album they'd released in years.
Production quality's better, but I mean, the songs don't, I mean, bands that have been around for 30, 40 years, they're not making things like they used to. As much as I have a soft spot for them, I don't know anyone that goes, that new Aerosmith album's amazing. Because everyone mentions Aerosmith, they think of stuff that was written in the 70s.
And honestly, all the Kiff stuff, you have to realize that none of those people are still alive. They're all animatronics now.
Yeah!
Make them the same people, though.
See, at least Eric Carr was his own character. What a great drummer. He was the Fox, and Vinnie Vincent was whatever he was for an album. But you're not fooling me. Tommy Thayer's not Ace, but I mean, they're guns for hire, and they're making great money, and they're getting the tour of the world, and they can say they're part of Kiss. So I don't blame them. But yeah, Kiss is not what it was in terms of music. Boy, this took a different direction all of a sudden.
All right.
Toughest obstacle. I don't know. Do you have one, Matt?
Survival.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I started a company that does this, and we've gone through this ongoing roller coaster. The industry is up, the industry is down, the industry is up, the industry is down, and it's a business that rewards the people who hang on the hardest and refuse to give up because we just love this stuff so much. Anime, and that's the key thing. But
That's, I don't know if I have any better answer than that. Yeah, probably just sticking around and still doing it. I mean, it's pretty rough sometimes. The work can be lean.
Yeah, feast or famine in the world of any sort of acting or freelance. Just being a freelance anything. You never know when your next job's going to happen. Different things pay different. This month. It's very nerve-wracking, very, very stressful. The first 5 or 6 years of me living in LA, I was dead broke, living check to check and going into major credit card debt, and I was so depressed. And then I stuck it out, and I started getting more established, and I started working more, finally. But that's not to say that that's always going to happen for everyone, because everyone's path is unique. Some people could move to LA and suddenly just continue working, just stick it out, though. You got to have that certain, that passion within you saying, I want to do this, and I accept all the negative weight that's involved to get to the good stuff. Because when you finally do get to work in the business of your passion, it feels so good. It's so victorious. You don't want it just handed to you.
yeah,
It's so much more rewarding if you work for it.
yeah,
Absolutely agree.
Someone that Tiff knew once said, really see yourself doing, because you really have to want it. It is a brutal job, and there are a lot of times when you're going to be a piece of meat, as far as everyone's concerned.
Yeah, it's funny, you talk about feast or famine, and yeah, I mean, I've had some periods where, oh gosh, there's nothing going on for a few weeks, you don't get any auditions, nothing's happening, and then it'll be all of a sudden where you'll book, maybe 2, 3, 4 things, all that are happening within a week, and to anything, to any audition, to any job. I never say no, even if I know I'm going to be really, really tired. I just, like, I can't say no. I have to do it because it just shows people that you're eager and that you're a go-along kind of person, that they can count on you and you're dependable and you'll be there. So, whatever is required, you just have to do it, or else
towards that, whatever is involved, taking classes, saving your money. It's very expensive to take classes and move and create demos, and it's a long process of trying to network with casting people and other actors and everything to foster and feed these professional working relationships. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take years, and that famous cliche is so true. You've got to take 10 years to be an overnight sensation. Really. Doing a life of work that you hate just to stay, to keep the roof over your head. That's important. Obviously, you got to get the bills paid and all that. But if you're not doing a job that you're passionate about, then you're not going to live a happy life. So as long as you try to achieve that nirvana, you never know where it's going to lead. It may not work, but at least you tried.
Yeah, I mean, I actually know people that on a volunteer basis, and they'll be in amateur productions on the weekends, and they're quite happy doing that because that lets them have their creative outlet to do that. Now, for me, I would not be satisfied to do that. I couldn't have it as a part-time thing. I would want that to be like my whole life. But but that's something like that for some people that satisfies that urge. Yeah. Do we have another question, Rachel?
Yes, we got one right here.
G'day, guys. In the wonderful
The thing about, like you say, like with TV bloopers and movie bloopers, most of that is based on something like the people they're supposed to have memorized their lines, obviously, when you're working on a film, and they've forgotten the line, or they, messed the line up because they don't remember what they're supposed to say. Well, when you're voice acting, you actually have the script right in front of you, so it's not really like the same kind of bloopers, or there's not a blooper of they're not really the kinds of things that you think of when you see those sort of outtakes at the end of a movie. It's just more like you're reading a line and you kind of get a little tongue-tied or something when you're trying to say something.
Yeah, you do have a thing where you just intentionally make something up just to mess with somebody. Whether you're just screwing around or like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we did it this way? Okay, ha ha ha, we all get a laugh out of it. Okay, get rid of it. Are like, we need to go get into that building. What do we do now? and then the one who's recording first lion, well, take off your clothes and.
Yeah.
And you'll have that as an alternate line, and you'll do it 2 or 3 times, and then the engineer will just slide that up on like the 4th take. Just like.
Yeah, I mean, we'll occasionally do fun stuff like that, but mostly just for each other. You know, it's nothing that really gets saved. But I don't know. Can you think of any kind of bloopery sort of things?
Not necessarily. And then we're doing it. And then sometimes it depends on who you are. But if I start tripping on words, I just go blah, 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 and I start speaking in tongues. Other people start singing. Sam Riegel starts singing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
The hills are alive. And so Crispin Freeman and Steve Bloom have notorious X-rated outtakes. I know that outtakes and bloopers are like the most popular, feature it seems like fans crave and wish there were more of. And I keep asking, it's like, why don't we put more like
us to have those sort of mistakes on there because it would seem disrespectful of the material. But yeah, that's a good point. Like if I start getting tongue-tied on a line and I don't get it right or something, I'll just start going, oh, crappity craps. It's nothing so impressive. Or if I read a line and it's obviously way too short, and so I've just read the line and maybe the line is something like
I guess it counts. But especially back in the old days when the technology wasn't as good, if you had something like a fight scene or something, you pretty much had to hit everything dead on. You couldn't allow it to be done in separate bits and then put together. And we did a show called Battle Angel. And I remember this specifically is that Amanda Wynn, who's playing Gally, who's Alita in the comic book, we were doing this fight scene, and it was her character and my character. Bam, 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 bam. We both had to do it pretty much continuous takes, about 4.5 minutes worth of fight Foley, nonstop. At the top, because it's too tight together to edit. It would sound edited if you did it. And she was just getting over a really bad case of the flu. And we're sitting there recording, and of course, we're looking at the recording images and stuff rather than looking at her in the booth. And she's, I hear this, boom. Because of that stuff, the fight scenes were so intense and nonstop. And the other one I like to pull up is when we did a show called Princess Nine. There's a lot of stuff in there where people are playing baseball, and to try and get that sound effect when you're actually swinging a bat, we had a fake little bat we had made up. It was like half size of a regular bat, but made up of scripts just taped together, so the actors could kind of and get that kind of percussive feel into their voice. And Monica Rial was doing this one scene, and
she just smacked the hell out of the real bat, and there was a loud clang. And then, didn't you guys hear something in the distance like, oh, sorry?
No, we looked in the booth, and she's. It was like her first major part. She was like, I'm going to be fired.
I've just broken the microphone.
But stuff like that occasionally happens where you just, the stupidity, you're in the middle of a take, and, like.
In the giant suit of armor. So he had to record there was this metal bowl that was put in front of the microphone for him to record into. So the character that I played, Marta, for several episodes, she gets inside of the suit of armor and rides around in there. So all of my dialogue that I did while I was inside of the suit of armor, I also had to use the bowl. And if you weren't careful, occasionally you could accidentally hit the bowl, the metal bowl. Very bad. You don't want to damage the microphone or the special bowl or the engineer's hearing.
Yeah, sometimes it's just bizarre things you're doing to get effects. So I remember when we did a show called Dragon Knight, there were these lizard creatures with these long tongues, and the animation was really cheap, so the mouths would open and close, but the tongues would never come in. And we said, how would that really sound? So the actors were all, yes, this is how we're going to do this now. People coming into the room, the actors all, yes, this is blah, blah, blah. We just had everyone was walking around like this. Yes, this we're inside a gas mask now, And it sounded great on the finished film, but it was bizarre. You'd come in and everybody would be sitting there.
Yeah, recording with their hand in front of their mouth.
We recorded on Blue Gender right after, we were doing Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu Hakusho. And Blue Gender, I think, was our first, really dark, serious show. And then in order to do, and it's set in the future, right? So they're communicating over the radio. In order to do that, normally you just hit up in a rubber band around the mic. So it would sound a little like that. This was before FMAs, before the bowl, but I was just laughing to myself going, are we really doing this? This sounds like something people would do at home. Put a pantyhose on the mic and then it's protected from, spits and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
well, on Bubblegum Crisis, we actually, the helmet effects, it was just everyone would talk like this when they were wearing their helmet. Perfect.
Really?
Because we tried a lot of different stuff. But if we just did that, it had to feel like, their head's inside something.
Yeah, really, I think a lot of times just sort of, like you said, ghetto type stuff with a Dixie cup or a metal bowl or putting your hand over your mouth, really just basic stuff like that. It makes a big difference when you're trying to create a certain effect when you're recording.
Yeah, like if you have to do Foley and your character is eating, you just kind of nom on your finger or stick a pencil in your after so many takes.
Yeah, I've been known to actually eat real food when I was working. But then if you don't have the real food there, like you say, just your finger works really well.
Didn't Mel Blanc do that with Bugs Bunny? He hated carrots, so he'd chew the carrots and spit them out after each take.
He was actually allergic to carrots. He would only
allergic to carrots?
He would only he would pose with them. It was usually celery, if I recall correctly. I can't remember exactly from his book, but yeah, he was allergic to carrots. It actually caused his throat.
Questions, so we've got one here.
Okay.
I've got to ask, what is the hardest line that you've ever had to do?
I don't know about hard lines because it goes back to the screaming thing. If I have to scream for hours on end at the top of my lungs, then any line is going to be difficult to say, especially if you need multiple takes. And in the case of video games, they don't want just one take. They want you to do it like 3 in a row, for example. I would imagine emotional stuff where you have to cry. That's kind of difficult. Kiba on Naruto had a very touching thing where Akamaru almost died and everything, and it was in a filler ep, so most fans didn't see it. But I'm like, okay, that was a little hard because I'm, to tap into that part of yourself to sound authentic. Whereas me and Mary McGlynn, the director, are cracking jokes between every take. Like, all right, get back to serious. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
can't remember like a specific line that was really, really difficult, but just, yeah, I would say like the more really, really emotional things. In the end of Evangelion film, there was a part with Asuka, and it lasted, God, it seemed like forever, but I think it was at least a minute or more of just me repeating the line, "I don't want to die." But it starts off at a point where modulate it where it was growing at the right pace, not peaking too soon. And then we actually recorded separately. It ends with like a really like full on screaming at the top of my lungs, "I don't want to die," like really full on. So that particular bit, like that's not really a line. That was because it just went on for way too long to be a line, but that particularly has always stuck with me. Mostly now we're just looking at the script on a video monitor, but about halfway through the take, my watch clanged on the music stand. Are you thinking of any difficult
Well, he
lines?
thinks I can throw in pronunciation of Japanese names. Sometimes that trips us up.
Yeah, if it's like something that has lots and lots of syllables.
Like what?
Yeah.
Can we do this phonetically, please?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. There's some actors who just cannot get Japanese pronunciation out, and it's just like you'll be on take 73, and you're like, you know what? Let's just call him Jimbo.
And on the radio, the news reporter was trying to say it, and he got all twisted up, and he was like, "Kopaka, a beach." I thought it was brilliant.
Copa banana? What?
Clock right in here.